So what I'm going to talk about today is mobilising business intelligence. What I really want to do is show you a live demo. I should add that it is a live demo. The data is currently residing in a server in Seattle, and I'm connecting using 3G. Okay? The server itself is hosted, so there are probably more points of failure than I would actually like for a live demo, because I've got a data source, I've got PowerPivot after that, then I've got Tableau server. This data has been served up by Tableau, and I've got the iPad, and I've got the hotel's dodgy Wi-Fi to contend with as well. So please bear with me. And so I'm going to do the demo first, partially because I would think you would probably benefit by seeing the end result first, so you can see what I'm actually talking about. And then what I will do is I'll disconnect the iPad, I'll give it to Tobias, and you can have a play, okay? As long as nobody steals it, of course. There is always that, okay? So the demo, so I thought one topical subject at the moment is census data. Okay, so the census data in 2001 showed that the fourth largest reported religion in the UK was Jedi Knight. Yeah. Now, there's not that many people here, but I wonder, did anybody actually say they read Jedi Knight in the census last time? Yes, you did. Oh, well done. Round of applause. Good man, good man. I'm sorry I don't have any prizes to give you. I would have given you one. I'll see if I can get you a beer token later. That's brilliant. Okay. So the debate is, at the moment, is whether or not the same thing will happen. How many people will report themselves as Jedi Knights? So what I thought I would do is actually visualize the Jedi Knight data. So if anything goes wrong with my presentation, I've got a Jedi Knight to help me. The Force will be with me, yes. Right. I'm just going to fix this. So the thing with the Jedi data was it was interesting because I had location data as well, you see. Because we've got the location of the Jedi as they appear. I should say that there was about 14 people recorded themselves as Sith as well. Are any Sith here? There's a Sith, all right, okay. Well, that means there's balance in the universe, so I'm happy with that. Okay. So this is me. I've just connected to the iPad at the moment. I've got it here. Just to show you, I am connecting to the iPad. If I do this, it swivels round, okay? It'll find a little minutes and then it'll come back again. Okay. So all I've done is a dashboard. Basically, this dashboard shows the location of the Jedi Knight, and it also shows the percentage of the Jedi, and it shows the actual numbers as well, okay? So, for example, in Leeds, over 6,000 people recorded themselves as Jedi Knights. I'm not sure what that says, but Leeds, sorry. Well, I couldn't really get any Scottish census data on Jedi. The only thing I did get was there's 8 members of Strathclyde Police identified themselves as Jedi Knights in Glasgow. They obviously need more of them to control Glasgow. So yeah, it was disappointing. Yeah, I did think about that. So we'll see how many Jedi we've got this time. Fortunately, there was no Sith in the Glasgow Police. That would have been quite alarming. So the percentage of people recording themselves as Jedi was actually strongest in Brighton, where the last Secobits conference was. The two events were not correlated, I'm sure. Okay, so this is just a very basic dashboard. The reason I did it this way is the data source is actually the same. The data source is PowerPivot, and later on in the demo, I'll show you how I mashed the data together. It's actually 2 sources of data. One is the census data, which is freely available from the census website. You can go and have a look once you've cleaned it up. It's all in CSV format. And the second source of data is from the Ordnance Survey. If you look in the Ordnance Survey, they will actually give you loads and loads of data about geographical locations, things around the UK. So if you're ever looking for any data to visualise or just to play around with and have some practice, this is the way to do it. So in terms of mobilising business intelligence, it's different from doing presenting data on a laptop or on a larger screen like a kiosk. The reason for that is there's a few reasons. One is you're using 3G normally to connect, Wi-Fi if you're lucky. I'm using 3G at the moment. So what that means is there's not so much data can be transferred across. It's not the same as sitting on your local area network in your office. So because it takes longer to load the data, this can make users even more impatient for the data than they already are. You know? I'm sure everybody feels the pain sometimes of seeing a report taking a long time to run, and the fact it's over 3G actually exacerbates the problem as well. Okay. So I don't know if anybody's heard of the work of Stephen Few. Any hands? A few people? Yeah, good. So what Stephen Few and another gentleman by the name of Edward Tufte talk about, they talk about displaying data as clearly and simply as possible to get the message of the data across to as many people as possible. Okay? Some people love 3D, they love red and green, they love pie charts, for example. But data visualization is all about you presenting data to other people for their benefit. So even if your gut instinct tells you that you love red and green pie charts, maybe your audience are colourblind, for example, and can't read the data properly. Okay, so that's really why, in this particular example, I've used brown and green. Brown and orange. I can't even tell them on colours. I've used brown and orange. The reason for that was actually to try and make the visualisation stand out against the projector. I've had problems before with projectors like this and using certain colours. So the colour palette here was really determined by the projector. Normally I would have used something that's maybe blue or something like that. Now, people intend to encode data in different ways. They tend to see data in different ways. I've encoded this data twice on the map. The size of the circles actually represent quantity, but so does the intensity of the colour as well. Because some people will look at that and they will say, and they will think to themselves, the brighter, more intense colour means a higher value. And other people will look at it equally and say, the size of the circles are greater, so that must be a greater value. There's no right or wrong, and I think that's one of the challenges of data visualization. It's trying to get your data visualized in such a way it can capture as many people as possible. So that's why I've used colour and size. I've used horizontal bar charts. I haven't used 3D. 3D could take longer to render. Also, some people don't see it properly. Further, because the iPad is quite a small device, you want to really use the space as wisely as you can. There's very little real estate for you to play around with. Although you can't see the iPad here, it's actually in landscape format. And you can size the screen so that it fits perfectly on the iPad. But actually, when you see it, it's not very large in terms of the pixels. I've used horizontal bar charts for a few reasons. One is because it allows for sorting. So I've put the highest value at the top and the lowest at the bottom. The reason I've done it that way is to allow your eye to do some of the thinking for you. It's identifying the highest value. I've also used colour, again, to encode the quantity. In the West, we tend to read from left to right. And it's easier for us to do that than it is for the eyes to bounce up and down between the legend and the actual value. What you find as well is when you show people a chart for the first time, they've done eye tracking studies in this, which are quite interesting. Has anybody done an eye tracking study? No? Okay. But, some marketing agencies do this. I spoke to somebody who said they did it for Sony. So what they'll do is you wear special glasses, that will actually measure where you're looking at. So they bounce light off your eye, and they try and work out where the eyes are looking at. And when you do that, when someone's looking at a graph, what you find is the eyes bounce back and forth between the legend and then the visual, the legend, then the visual. What you're trying to do when you're visualizing data is not only allow people to understand the data well, but allow them to understand it quickly as well. So, and when we look at visualizations like this, eye tracking studies tend to show that this smaller graphs like that means that there's not quite so much what they call cognitive load in the system. You're not requiring people to do too much thinking, because of course we don't want people to think, do we? We want people just to look at the data as simply as they can. Okay. So you can actually do quite a bit in terms of visualizing the data. I'm going to show you. Here's another example which I've taken using the AdventureWorks data. Hopefully it will load. I'm glad the first one loaded, so at least you've seen one, so that's good. Again, I've used a map. I'm sorry about the bright pink. I just wanted something that really would stand out against the projector so that you could see it. On the right-hand side, I've used a heat map. The thing with heat maps is you have to be careful about the colour gradations. I tend to do a stepped colour value, so I'll do a light colour, a medium colour, then a dark colour. I tend to find if you vary the intensity too much in the colours, the colours start to look very close together. They don't look what they call perceptually distinct, so it's quite difficult to do comparisons. So you're increasing cognitive load, so it makes it that bit harder for people to actually understand the data. So you just try and stagger it a little bit. Just keep it as simple as possible. I used purple just to make it stand out. The bottom right-hand side shows two things. I've tried to squeeze more data into the space. Year-on-year analysis by category. So the pink line chart actually shows you the rate of change in the sales. Yeah? So we're trying to emphasise the increase in the sales value, in the value sold of bikes, for example, in AdventureWorks. And the bar chart actually shows the values in numbers, not the rate of change of sales. Okay. So what you can do as well, this is actually, this is surfaced by Tableau, and it allows you to do some quite neat things. You're not just rendering, rendering HTML pages for people to look at. It's more interactive than that. And that's one way that mobile business intelligence presents you with a more interesting challenge of getting people to interact with the data in a smaller space. So at the top here, we've got a sales amount filter. I'm just going to tap it. And what that allows you to do is filter the data. So you could just see, for example, the top slice of data, if that's what you wanted to see. Okay. Another way you can improve the interactivity of the data is a technique they call brushing the data. This will come up, I promise. Okay. So by allowing people to interact with the data, you can actually do what's known as brushing, which allows you to highlight some parts of the data rather than others. Okay. So we're looking at category at the moment. I'm going to try and click on the blue line at the bottom. Just thinking about it. Okay. So what's good about the iPad is you can zoom in as well. I like that feature because it saves me trying to use zoom it on the keyboard. I never get that quite right. I can zoom in and I can't get back out again. So when you zoom in and you click on a line, you can actually focus on a particular element of it. Yeah. So, sorry. That allows you just to focus in on that particular item. I don't know if anybody's heard of a gentleman called Ben Schneiderman. Yeah, one person, okay. Ben Schneiderman talks about the way in which people actually interact with data. The first thing they tend to do is just to summarise the data. So presents people with a summary first. And then you start to zoom and filter on the data. You start to filter. And then you zoom down to the detail. So the hierarchy is really summary, a middle layer of analysis, and then down to the detail. So if you use that sort of strategy when you're looking at dashboards and looking at reporting, there's quite a well-respected body of evidence behind it to show that that's how people interact with it. And if you stick with that sort of structure, then you should be comfortable. Okay. So what I will do, I'm going to unplug the iPad. Oops, I already did. And yeah. Okay. If you just pass it around, you see it's got a back button, so you can move back and forth. If it's a bit slow, then just bear with it. It's 3G, so I'm just going to plug back in. So having given you the demo, I wanted to give you more of a background on the data sources behind it. We've got PowerPivot. So we'll have a look at that. And then I just wanted to summarise some of the elements involved in mobilising business intelligence. Oops, there we go. That's good. Okay. So one of the key things about mobile business intelligence for me is that it really starts to facilitate self-service business intelligence. It's probably self-service business intelligence, maybe one of these buzzwords that you hear starting to appear. The strategy is really around trying to get business users to generate their own reports and analyse their own data rather than take the load off IT. Now, it does sound like some sort of panacea, and I think that when people start to talk about self-service business intelligence, they forget that they actually need a good data structures in place before you can do that effectively. So say, for example, you're visualising data or mashing up data sources, one of them is not clean. All that happens then is people are self-serving data that's dirty, and that's no good. You don't want to be surfacing data that's poor quality. Okay? It's got to be sanitised as well, and they should go through a process of data lineage too. So self-service business intelligence is a strategy in its own right, and so is, I'm happy to pass it. Yeah. I'm happy to pass the iPad around. I'm sure no one would steal it. If you can get it away from Tobias, that is. He seems enjoying playing with it. So mobile business intelligence is a strategy as well. You have to think about it more carefully in terms of things like the security. What happens if the iPad gets pinched, for example? What happens if an employee leaves the company and doesn't give you the iPad back? These are all very possible scenarios, so it's something to think about. It's a bit more complex than just rendering HTML pages. Okay, so what we're starting to see is more of a self-service mobile workforce. You may hear people saying, I'm working from home on Friday. It seems to be becoming more common. The idea is, if you've heard of Cisco did a study recently that showed that 3 out of 5 workers just said they didn't need to be in the office to be productive. There's also studies showing that people are using web-based email less, and they started to use more mobile email, so people are starting to get more mobile to do their work. It's almost like work is a thing that people do. It's no longer a place people go, so it's a bit of a cultural shift that's happening at the minute. So mobile business intelligence itself provides end users with the capability to access data on the go and to make decisions on the go as well. Just because they're out of the office shouldn't stop them from making critical decisions based on the data. Now, you're probably wondering, and I've been asked this a lot today, why did you use an iPad, given that this is SQL Server conference? So it's Microsoft. I think for me, the iPad is ubiquitous, and it is starting to become a much more sexy business tool. People are starting to say things like, oh, our executives love the iPad. All right. I'm sorry. There we go. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. So the Apple iPad, I don't know if you know how many downloads have been made from the iPad store, but it topped 15 billion recently. There's so many downloads taking place. So it's just really such a massive popular item. In fact, since April 2010, Apple have sold 30 million iPads, which is $9.5 billion in revenue. It sees the adoption for iPad itself is quite simple. Someone told me today that their 2-year-old could use it. It's such a really nice user interface. The thing with Apple is that the other vendors are starting to play catch up as well, but Apple are already in front, recognising the new technology that people are wanting and designing it. Okay. So the iPad itself is really around a low-impact adoption of people getting their own data. Okay, so that's why I chose it really, because a gentleman by the name of Howard Dresner has done some work around mobile business intelligence. And what Howard says that the iPad is actually the top priority for mobile business intelligence. I looked at a study recently that showed that the Windows was actually 5th in priority. Obviously, I hope that will change. And what I'd love is next time the SQL Bits 10 comes out, I'm standing showing you a Microsoft tablet doing the same thing. Hopefully that will happen one day. But the market is changing. Android is becoming more popular. So what I wanted to do is talk a bit about the architecture that supported the iPad and what we've actually showed you today. The 2 data sources are from the Ordnance Survey and the census data. That's been put into PowerPivot. And then what I've done is taken the PowerPivot and used that as a source to Tableau. And then we've been able to see that in the iPad. Now, if you are interested in using Tableau, there's actually a download from the iTunes store but it does need Tableau server to use that. So that's something you need to ask them about. I don't sell Tableau, I just like the software. So you need to speak to them about it. Okay. So before I show you what PowerPivot is, I'm aware that there's quite a difference in experience of PowerPivot. I held a pre-con yesterday and I had experts in PowerPivot, and then at the same time I had people that had never seen it before. So does anyone regard themselves as an expert apart from Alberto? No? All right, that's good. So we're all on the same level. That's fine. Okay. So PowerPivot's actually quite a subversive technology. The reason I say that is because it's really handing data back in the hands of business users rather than locked in IT vaults. And what's so nice about it is you can do lots of mashups with different data feeds, different sources as well. We've got two types. One is freely downloadable from the Microsoft website. And when you tell business users they can have millions of rows of data in Excel, they're normally just biting your hand off for it. They're so happy that they can do it. I don't tend to talk about the technical structure of PowerPivot when I'm speaking to users because they're not interested. They just want to know how they can stuff more data into Excel and make it into whatever visualization that they like. It is scalable if you use the SharePoint version of PowerPivot. What that means is that it actually becomes a part of SharePoint, and you can surface the PowerPivot data to a variety of users in your organization. Okay. So if you're interested in what data you can mash up into PowerPivot, there's so many different types you can use. The Windows Azure Data Market, has anybody played with that? A few people, well, Chris, yeah. Okay, a few people. I suggest you go and have a look at it. I've downloaded it and played it. Basically, it's essentially like renting data. And that's quite a subversive thing in its own right, because it means that you are renting data that's already been cleaned and sanitized and looked after for you. So that's quite a powerful thing. It means you're not having to do that work yourself internally. When I look at the Azure data market, it's very American oriented at the moment, as you'd expect, but I'm hoping to see more UK sources come online in the future. Okay. You can take data in from Oracle as well. You can also use atom feeds. Atom feeds are really nice to take data in from, and text files too. You can also take in sources, other Microsoft sources like analysis services, and you can also use reporting services as a source to the PowerPivot. So you can imagine the sort of fun that users can have mashing up all this data. Yeah. Okay, so it's Tableau. You're probably wondering why I've put Toy Story up there. I'm not going to talk too much about Tableau, but Tableau was invented by the Stanford professors who created the Pixar software that created these characters, Buzz and Woody. I'm assuming everybody knows who Toy Story is. I'm not having many blank faces, that's good. So what they decided when they did the work at Pixar was to take that effort and apply it to visualizing data. And that's what they did. Okay. Okay. How not to do business intelligence. It's the first time I've ever shown a pie chart in a presentation. Okay. The reason that this isn't very good is I've talked about pie charts before. People can't read area very well. It also doesn't allow people to sort very well. So, for example, we've got the pink slice, and then with the eye has to bounce back and forth between the pink slice, and we see, oh, right, that means cameras. Is that the same as the purple slice? It's slightly bigger, by how much? So it actually increases cognitive load because you're starting to make people think. The other thing is it's not a very good use of the space. On an iPad, you're so restricted for the space that you have. You don't want to just use the space to give you one message if you can squeeze more data in it. It's more about balance. The black background I'm not worried about particularly, because the pie chart doesn't allow you to sort the data as well. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So some tips for mobile business intelligence visualization. The first thing that you should do is set user expectations. And by that, what I mean is they have to understand that they're accessing data across the internet, that it's not going to be as fast as it is in the office. If they're lucky, it might be. But there will be times that it will be slow. Okay? It's just a very natural thing, but people do get impatient if their reports are not quick. You must see it all the time, and certainly I do. Balancing combining graphs is all about try not to have too much on the page, but not just use it having too little either. Sometimes you've got to just try things and see how they look, a real suck it and see approach, just to see how it works. But when you start to break the canvas down into the size that the iPad can take, then you start to realise, actually, I can't put that much data on here. And filtering the data is useful as well. You could filter it before it actually gets to the iPad, or you could put in some interactivity that will allow people to filter the data by themselves. Yeah. And what's useful about that is you start to get tied into the theoretical background, into the way that people visualise data and understand it, the work that Schneiderman has done around dashboards, summarising, filtering, then down to detail. So you're starting to follow a very natural progression of how people interact with data. Okay. Another thing which I couldn't show you, actually, was drill downs. Again, you're coming back to the theory of how people interact with dashboards. But drill downs are actually really useful just as a way of allowing people to see the detail and to summarise as well. Because if you can summarise and squeeze on more data onto the iPad, then that's a good thing. Tooltips are really handy. I should have shown you tooltips and I didn't. I'm sorry about that. I assume that everyone knows what they are. So if you click on a data point, it will actually give you a little note will pop up that will show you some more contextual information about the points that you're looking at. And that's always handy. It's nice because it's on demand as well. Okay. Okay. So some tips for mobile business intelligence visualization. An area of concern really is that maps can take a long time to load. So just to be careful of that. I personally really like maps as a way of visualizing data. I think that they supply a context which is difficult to get anywhere else. Because every event happens somewhere, and most events do. So when you start to give people ways of analysing the data, it's really exciting to see their response to it. Sometimes people ask for location, they don't actually need it, they just think it looks cool. And then they've got the iPad as well, so then it makes it even more cool. So if people are getting excited about the data, then that's a good thing if it helps them to adopt it. Okay. Zooming can be problematic, that's true. The iPad does it really well because you can do the stretch, pinch and open and it comes up really nicely. But some devices find it quite difficult to zoom. A BlackBerry, any BlackBerry fans in the audience? One, yeah, okay. BlackBerries are not so comfortable with zooming in, yeah. Maybe that will change if there's a demand for it, who knows. Okay. Right, I'm going to show everybody an illusion. I won't show you it for very long. Okay. Okay. This is called a Hermann grid. And one thing that you don't want to do in a mobile or any sort of data visualization is this sort of illusion. Okay. And the reason for that is if you start to look at the points where the corners actually meet, it looks like there's a white ball in between where the lines intersect, like that. And if you start to use a lot of heavy blacks on the screen in tables, you can actually start to get a moiré effect, a Hermann effect, just like that, just at the points where it connects. For some people, probably most people don't notice it, but I personally notice it. It becomes a bit fuzzy, a bit blurry, and it's a shame to have very heavy black lines if you don't need them. It sort of boxes the eye in, and you're at risk of distorting the data potentially because you've introduced this illusion. So if you're not sure about using black lines, I tend to just make them really thin and then use a light grey line just to try and soften it a bit. And it comes up really nicely in the iPad anyway. So you've got enough to help the line of the eye as it follows the data visualization, but not too much. Again, it's about balance. Okay. Are there any photographers in the audience? Tobias? Yeah? And someone, yeah, Casper as well. Okay, you're probably familiar with this one. It's the moiré illusion. So again, coming back to the point about using very heavy black lines on the screen and on the iPad, if you start to intersect a lot of black lines, you can, okay, this is an exaggerated example, but you can get this moiré illusion as well. Okay, so again, the black line isn't really there, but it just looks like it is. So that can be quite confusing and quite distorting as well. So I think the main takeaway point is that it's not too many heaviness in terms of the line. I've talked a little bit about colourblind as well. The choice of the colour palette is quite important for the iPad as it is for normal laptops as well. I was given some sponsor literature the other day, and they gave me what they had, and they had red and green charts in it. So I'm going to have a chat with them at some point so that we can change that. Are there any colourblind people here? Yeah, one gentleman. Yeah, exactly. So again, you don't want red and green together because it's confusing, not just for colourblind, but also for people that are very short-sighted. And the reason for that is when you look through the glasses, it can, if you don't look at the visualising straight on through the glasses, you can get a bit of a blurring effect just at the corner of the eye. So again, you don't want to induce migraines in the people that you're trying to give data to. Okay. So that's really the background about mobile business intelligence. What I want to do now is dig out PowerPivot, and I'll show you how I put the data together. Okay. So while I'm doing that, are there any questions? Everyone's just wanting to go on the iPad, right? Right. Okay. Okay. So I might have to ask for some of your help to try and get this across. Tobias is my technical wizard. Even though I brought an iPad today, I'm actually terrible with hardware. Printers, phones, fax machine, the whole thing goes. Yeah. We'll get that off. It's what I've done in the PowerPivot. How many people have actually used PowerPivot? Okay. Okay, that's good. So about half of the people in the audience. So what I'll do is I'll start from the beginning, and then we'll have a chat about how the PowerPivot's been put together. Just thinking about it. Okay.
I think it's okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I haven't been so relieved to see Excel in a long time, so I'm sorry about that. Okay. So this is Excel, obviously, but when you install Excel, PowerPivot, you need to actually, the first thing that's useful is if you install PowerPivot and you can't see it anywhere, what you have to do is put it in as an add-in to Excel. And the way that you do that is to go to File, then Options, go to Add-ins, and then see down here, it says Manage Excel Add-ins. You actually want COM add-ins, yeah? And that will start to show you the COM add-ins that are available in Excel. It's just a small tip. It's one of these things, because you hear people say, install PowerPivot, but it didn't do anything. I couldn't see it. And actually, that's the issue. You need to add it in sometimes. And if you sometimes open Excel and you lose PowerPivot, it's probably lost that setting. So don't swear too much. Just go back, add it in again. Everything's fine. Okay. So when you add in PowerPivot, you actually get a new menu bar appearing. You get a new ribbon. So when we look at PowerPivot, you can see it here. You get a nice green background, and the rows just highlighted alternate light and dark green, so you can see it more easily. And what I sometimes see people do is try and change the data in the PowerPivot. It doesn't let you do that. You need to re-import it, okay? It's not like Excel in that perspective, so don't be fooled by the fact it looks like Excel. It's actually, I sort of define PowerPivot as a user-oriented database. It allows them to mash up the data as they see fit. I tend to see the users that PowerPivot is for, there's a very clear audience for it. It's more for your analysts. Someone who's very IT literate would probably use SQL Server to hold their data in. They may use PowerPivot, but they probably lean towards that. Whereas with the PowerPivot audience, it's for analysts who are very data aware. They understand relationships in the data, and they also are comfortable with Excel formulas. They may even have written VB macros. Okay. Okay, so it tends to be aimed at that audience, not your novice user. Okay. So what I've done is in this PowerPivot, this data I'm looking at here at the moment is the Jedi Knight data, the census data that refer to Jedi Knights, which I downloaded from the census website. So you can go on and have a look and have a play yourself. Okay. So this data itself was just imported straight in from a CSV file. I'm not going to do that here because it will take time to do that, and there's nothing more boring than watching the green circle as it goes round. Okay, so if somebody wants to come and find me later, if they want me to see me do that, it's fine. Okay. But to import data, you've got a whole range of data sources up here, like the ones I talked about for mashing up the data. So get external data from a database, SQL Server, first one, obviously. From other sources, that's where you start to want to take in data from Excel, for example, because you could do that and have that actually as part of the PowerPivot. Okay. Taking data from Teradata, from Sybase, and these other forms. Yeah. I'm going to cancel that. So this was the census data as it stands. Okay. And this data was taken from the Ordnance Survey. And all it is basically is the outs code of the postcode, and it's the longitude and the latitude for that. Obviously, some postcodes are quite large, so just a point has been picked when the data has been sanitized. Okay. Okay. So when we look at latitude and longitude, I'll pull this is us back to the original Jedi Knight data. So all I did basically was merge the outs codes data from the geography, from the postcode, and put it into the Jedi Knights data. That's all I've done. And the way that you do that is a very, very simple formula called related. And what that does is it just goes and uses the outs code of the postcode from the Jedi Knight data, which is here, and basically matches it with the Ordnance Survey data as well. That's all it does, really. I'm not going to show any very complex PowerPivot calculations. If you want to know about that, Alberto is in the middle. So Alberto can help with that. He's written a book on PowerPivot with Marco, and the book is brilliant, so I recommend you have a look at that. So once you've got the data into PowerPivot and then mashed up, you can see it really easily in Excel, and it just comes through like a pivot table. Yeah. So that's all this is. It's just a pivot table that looks at the PowerPivot and sees it as a data source. That's all. Okay. So if you're a user of Excel and you just want a data source that gives you everything that you need in one place, and you see it in Excel, well, PowerPivot is absolutely perfect for that. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you Tableau very quickly, not too much Tableau. Sorry. Tableau. Okay. So this is the data visualization software that I was talking about. Basically, it's really aimed at users, and it's aimed at naive users, so it's a bit different from PowerPivot. Yeah. It's a bit different from PowerPivot because it doesn't actually ask you, sorry, I'm just going to look for this file. It doesn't actually to think when you look at the data. What it does do is just try and make sure that you've got the data there that you can just pick and drag and drop. So if you bear with me just a second, I'll have a look. Has anybody used Tableau before? One person? All right, okay. Okay. Tableau. Sorry. Sorry, I can't find it. I know where it's gone. What I'll do is I'll show you a different example, okay? So we'll try and relate that, and then I'll relate it back to the example I've already tried to show you, okay? So can everybody see that all right, yeah? Okay, so this is Tableau, and basically it's aimed at very naive business users who are not technical in the slightest at all. I'll show you how this chart was created, and all it does is just it tells the user to drag and drop. There's no need for them to do any typing. This isn't for your reporting services developer. It's not for them at all. Somebody can program. They'd be able to use it, no problem, but Tableau isn't that for that audience. What this visualization is trying to show is the growth history of the company. The gentleman who created this visualization was a gentleman by the name of Christian Chabot, and what he does, he writes for New York Times and places like that. He's a bit of a business guru. So what he did was try and visualize the rate at which companies expanded in terms of the revenue, at which point were they classified as slow burner companies, or the red ones here, like Rackspace. We've got Rackspace here. So how many years Rackspace took to get to 50 million in revenue was 6 years. And they classified them as a rocket ship. Okay, so that's just a very simple way of visualizing the data. And what's interesting about it is you start to get away from your line charts, you start to get away from your horizontal bar charts and things like that. You get into much more the sphere of imagining how your data could be visualized. So it's a bit different from that perspective. Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, so this is coming back to the visual encoding of the data again. Okay, so the colour is used to identify quantity, and so is the size of the bubbles. And if you show a business user something like that, they get really excited because it looks quite different, it looks quite fresh, and on the iPad it looks really nice. But this is just trying to show volume and volatility of technology as per 2009. You've got the filters here as well. Filters you can do in things like reporting services, but it takes a lot of effort to do it, whereas in Tableau it's really simple to use. This is the last one I'll show you. It's a very small horizontal bar chart, and it's basically the colour is representing different years. Okay, so we go back to the first one, and I'll show you how that was done. Okay, so this is the Tableau interface. You can see here that it's just all drag and drop. There's no typing at all. So for people it's quite subversive technology along with PowerPivot, because you've got PowerPivot where you can mash up all these different data sources. You don't need to be very IT literate to do it. And then you've got Tableau as well, which is much more aimed at the users. So there's a real sort of paradigm shift, I think, in business intelligence, where people are starting to give power back to the users, not so much about trying to use different types of technology for very technically able people. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions, but just to summarise, because I know I've gone through everything at quite a pace, what I wanted to do was show you just an example of mobile business intelligence, just so you get an idea of how it can actually be surfaced on the iPad. It's the sort of thing that's very accessible to everybody to go and use. For example, if you want to look at using Tableau, for example, it's free. And now what I will do is I'll put these links on my blog so that you can go and click on the links and have a play with them. Yeah, so that's something that you can do just to try it and see what you think. Have a play with it. We've talked a little bit about mobile business intelligence in terms of the advantages for the mobile workforce, who are actually able to work from home or work wherever they feel like and have the data that they need at their hands to make critical decisions as and when they need to make it, not necessarily have to be in a particular location to do it. We've talked a little bit as well about some of the issues around visualising mobile data, namely don't try and pack too much on the screen, okay, because it will take a long time to render. And you might lose some of the message in the data just simply because there's too much on the iPad for people to see it properly. We've talked about some of the issues in mobile business intelligence as well. So we talked about issues like security. Okay. So that's a big issue as well. And also, you start to get into planning mobile business intelligence as well. So do your reports for the iPad look very different from the ones that are surfaced on the laptop? And if so, how is that? And then it's trying to get the message to the business users that they need to think carefully about what data they need to visualise and how that's going to be done. Okay. So we talked a bit about PowerPivot as well. I know we didn't cover it in much detail. There are other sessions in PowerPivot that are going on in the next few days, so I just wanted to touch upon it. It is easy to use if you want to do things like simple formula, but there are complexities as well. So if someone's not comfortable with Excel formulas, then it's probably not for them either. Okay. Tableau we talked a little bit about, more than intended to. It's just a nice way of visualising data, that's all, about giving data back to the users. I'm hoping that when Project Crescent comes out in Denali, I've seen it and it looks lovely, it looks really nice, so hopefully I'll show you that next time. But the thing with Project Crescent is it's very much in the same vein as Tableau because it's more drag and drop, it's much more user oriented, and I think they've really tried to make an effort to make it as simple for people to use as possible. Okay, so having summarised, are there any questions? No. Everyone is wanting to go to the pub? No? All right. Well, I think Alan is going to talk about what's coming up next on Saturday. Is that right? Okay. Or I can do it, I don't mind. All right, okay. Okay. So, oh, thank you.